Hello. All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Lazy Real Talk. Tonight's talk is not covered by mainstream media. I think they may cover it in a month. We're quite forward thinking. As the US shifts its strategic focus toward China, the geopolitical landscape is evolving rapidly. While media coverage largely centers on Trump's policies, the real battle is unfolding in the Asia Pacific. Following South Korea's political turmoil, Taiwan is now facing a similar crisis, with President Lai's government handicapped by an opposition controlled legislative body. Tonight's talk will go beyond the headlines to analyze the CCP's hidden maneuvers, Taiwan's growing vulnerability, and the broader implications for regional security. So we'll first talk about Trump's ambiguous China policy, and then we'll go right into what's happening in Taiwan, its ongoing political crisis. And then we'll compare Taiwan's situation with that of South Korea. And then we'll wrap up by talking about Beijing's strategy in the Asia Pacific. So first things first, with President Trump taking office, the next 4 years, in my opinion, will be defined by a confrontation between the US and China, a clash that can possibly lead to a historic battle of the century. This conflict is inevitable. Trump's vision of making America great again stands in direct opposition to Xi Jinping's ambition of global communist expansion. The historic showdown cannot be avoided. Neither leader will abandon their vision for the future, making this showdown unavoidable. Trump's political survival or legacy is inseparable from his vision, just as Xi Jinping's future as a communist emperor depends on his expansionist ambitions. Both sides recognize the stakes, and the stage has been set, making strategic preparations at full speed. Some people have expressed disappointment that President Trump has yet to announce concrete policies against China. Critics argue that at his core, Trump is a deal maker who operates on transactional policies. However, his view on China fully aligns with his Secretary of State, Marco Rubio's assessment that China possesses the greatest threat the US has ever faced. The underlying tensions behind Trump's early foreign policy moves, whether in Panama, Greenland, Mexico, or Canada, all point back to the growing threat of the Chinese Communist Party. Given the magnitude of the threat China poses, Trump is taking a measured, strategic approach. His seemingly friendly remarks about China, such as calling Xi Jinping his friend and describing US-China relations as great, are short-term let me shut this down. They are short-term opportunistic maneuvers designed to serve a larger geopolitical strategy. His plan to pivot US strategy toward China has encouraged a significant roadblock, that is, the wide gap between Russia and Ukraine's demands for ending the war. To bridge this gap, Trump is attempting to use China to pressure Russia into peace talks. However, the bigger geopolitical shift is that Russia appears ready to abandon China in order to normalize relations with the US. This is China's worst fear, that Russia will defect to the US, leaving Beijing isolated in a rapidly changing global order. So what we're witnessing is a high-stakes geopolitical chess game between China, Russia, and the US. It's a struggle for strategic realignment and control. Today, we know that Trump and Xi Jinping were close to holding a discussion on tariffs, but the talks fell through after China issued retaliatory tariffs, and they announced investigations into Google. In response, Trump stated that he's in no rush to negotiate with Xi. So this is the above is just a broad overview of where Trump currently stands in U.S.-China relations, sort of as a backdrop. Today, I want to move beyond the headlines and focus on a critical but underreported issue, the complex geopolitical landscape in the Asia-Pacific. More importantly, I want to examine the CCP strategy in the region. And this is the region where the next great power struggle is unfolding. Yet, it's not receiving enough attention in the mainstream press. So let's talk about Xi Jinping's strategic focus. It has been unwaveringly remained on Taiwan. Resolving the Taiwan issue on his terms is a critical step in CCP's global expansion, or in the blueprint of CCP's global expansion. It's also essential to his personal goal of lifelong rule. And for this reason, Xi Jinping has long harbored the idea of striking a deal with Trump over Taiwan. So in the past 4 years, the world became more alert about CCP's ambition. The United States under Biden has strengthened relations with allies and strategic partners in the Asia-Pacific. However, I must say, the U.S. didn't stop CCP's infiltrating activities in American allies or countries of American allies. Following the CCP's success in engineering a constitutional crisis in South Korea, leading to the political downfall of pro-U.S. President Yoon Suk-yeol, the CCP is trying to repeat the same maneuver in Taiwan. And this time, the stake is much higher. Now, let's review what happened in 2024. Beijing scored a big win in Taiwan's parliamentary election through the so-called Blue-White Coalition. This coalition, formed by the Kuomintang, which is KMT, which uses the color blue as its political color or political symbol. And then the newly formed Taiwan's People's Party, TPP, which uses the color white. So it's called a blue-white coalition. So this coalition now uses its legislative majority to obstruct the current administration's policies, weaken President Lai's government, and disrupt Taiwan's legal and political order. Even as Taiwan faces growing military threats from China, crucial defense budgets for urgent military upgrades have been severely slashed. So on January 21st, the opposition-controlled Legislative Yuan passed the annual government budget after 3 readings, with key sections of the budget being severely cut or frozen. The Office of the President saw its $26 million operational budget. Now, all the numbers I'm going to read you have been converted to US dollars. I convert them to US dollars from Taiwan dollars. So the Office of the President's is 73% of the Office of the President's budget of $26 million US dollars is now froze. And the Control Yuan, which is Taiwan's top government oversight body, had 96% of its budget slashed. In addition, severe defense budget cuts have happened. They have weakened Taiwan's military readiness. So, for example, the total defense budget was cut by $269 million US dollars, and a $2.88 billion US dollars worth of budget is frozen. And then the phase 3 of Taiwan's indigenous submarine program has 50% of its budget, or $64 million US dollars, frozen. And also the National Chongshan Institute of Science and Technology's drone research facility has 50% of its budget frozen. And about $163 million US dollars in the military equipment and facility budget is now frozen. 41, almost $42 million defense-related investment projects are frozen. And strategic communication and public relations funding was cut by 60%. This severely weakens the Ministry of National Defense ability to counter China's escalating disinformation and cognitive warfare operations in Taiwan. So the overall defense budget was cut by 6.6%, far exceeding the 1.1% average in previous years. With CCP's ever-escalating egregious behavior in the Strait, Taiwan's premier, Zhuo Rongtai, or Chou Zhongtai, I think that's in English, he called these budget cuts suicidal. Now, beyond the budget cuts, Taiwan also faces another serious crisis, that is, its constitutional court is not functioning. Late last year, the opposition coalition pushed through amendments requiring at least 10 justices to participate in hearings at the Constitutional Court, with rulings needing the approval of at least 9 justices to be valid. Taiwan's Constitutional Court has a total of 15 justices, and 7 of them stepped down in October 2023, leaving only 8 remaining justices. And President Lai's nominations for 7 new justices were all rejected by the opposition-controlled Legislative Yuan, meaning that for the foreseeable future, the Constitutional Court will remain with only 8 justices, making it unable to function under the new legal requirements. So Taiwan's ongoing political turmoil bears a striking resemblance to the crisis in South Korea, where a similar wave of budget cuts destabilized President Yoon's government, leading him to take a drastic action at the end of last year. In South Korea, the ruling People Power Party, PPP, was unable to gain a majority in the National Assembly. Well, some say that there was, election irregularity in South Korea, so that may not be the actual election results. But anyways, the PPP does not hold the majority in the assembly. Meanwhile, the opposition party, the Democratic Party of Korea, is the dominant force in the parliament. To seize political power, the opposition party formed alliances with other left-wing parties, working together to block the ruling party's policies, particularly in defense, national security, and public safety budgets. As a result, President Yoon eventually imposed emergency martial law to resolve the political deadlock, as well as investigate election irregularities. But this move only triggered an even bigger political storm for himself. Taiwan's current political situation mirrors that of South Korea. We can't help but ask if there's a common force at play. The striking similarities between Taiwan and South Korea suggest that the same external force is driving these events behind the scenes, and it points to Beijing. For decades, Beijing's infiltration in South Korea and Taiwan is what I call destructively detrimental, but largely ignored. The political crisis we see today in Taiwan and South Korea is the result of CCP's long-term influence campaigns. And the current situation in South Korea and Taiwan is indeed a result of the CCP's operations. Right now, both South Korea and Taiwan are experiencing internal divisions the political landscape has been split into the pro-China and pro-US factions. The pro-China faction promotes distrust toward Donald Trump and the United States. The pro-US faction warns about China's infiltration and political influence operations. And these two sides are clashing directly in both South Korea and Taiwan. But people say they are not the only countries. One Taiwanese expert say that Japan may be the next US ally facing a similar situation in the future if they don't stay alert. By the way, Japan has got rid of a pro-US prime minister and now has a pro-Beijing prime minister. By the way, on a side note, I want to say that the Philippines, the Immigration Bureau of the Philippines has stated, I think maybe yesterday, that Chinese spies have already integrated and blended into their society. Their immigration commissioner, I think his name is Norman Tansinko, said that the 5 suspected Chinese spies recently arrested in Palawan had been living in the Philippines for a decade, with some having relocated there as early as 2002. And the commission urged the public to stay vigilant and report any suspicious activities involving foreign nationals. And by the way, you've probably also heard about the spy mayor. There's a woman spy who is a publicly elected official in a Filipino city, and so she's the mayor during the day and runs CCP runs the undercover CCP operations at night. And this woman has disappeared. I think she's on a wanted list. So that just shows you the level of infiltration in the Asian countries. Now, according to Taoist principles, yin-yang are an inseparable pair. Where there's yin, there's yang. Where there's a negative impact, there's a positive one too. So the CCP might have scored a point in controlling the parliament of South Korea and Taiwan. But the positive impact the crisis has brought is the awakening of the public. So that's the positive. In South Korea, ordinary citizens, especially young people, have begun paying close attention to political developments. Many of them have become alert and believe the left-wing opposition's tactics are harming South Korea's national interests, and could alter the country's future path. Some people who opposed President Yuan's martial law have changed their position and taken to the streets to support the president, openly challenging the opposition party. And most interestingly, President Yuan's approval rate has risen rapidly since the crisis began. According to a survey conducted by the Korean Public Opinion Research Institute, the survey was conducted on January 31st and February 1st. So, according to that survey, President Yuan's approval rating reached 47%, a 2% increase from the previous week. And this also marks the 3rd consecutive week his approval rating has remained above 40%. As of mid-January, polls conducted by 7 major South Korean polling agencies consistently showed Yoon's approval rating exceeding 40%, which is a significant rebound from the record low 11% that he received after imposing martial law, which was only 2 months ago. He imposed the martial law on December 3rd, which was only 2 months ago. So he his popularity has risen from 11% to nearly 50%. A recent survey is conducted by K-Stat Research by two organizations. One is called K-Stat Research, and the other is the organization I told you, which is called the Korean Public Opinion Research Institute. So both organizations found that 40 and 45 these two organizations respectively found that 40 and 45% of respondents believe that the impeachment case against the president should be dismissed and that he should be reinstated to office. And this is a significant increase. In December, this was unthinkable. And also, there's a massive movement in South Korea to support the president. Similarly, in Taiwan, there's a mass movement targeting pro-CCP legislators. The Taiwanese public is calling to recall dozens of pro-CCP legislators. Now, let's talk about the Taiwan's parliament or Legislative Yuan. It consists of 113 legislators. The largest opposition party, KMT, holds 52 seats. The ruling DPP holds 51 seats. They're just off by one. It trails the KMT by 1 seat. Now, the third party, TPP, has 8 seats, and independents hold 2 seats. Although no single party has an absolute majority, the opposition bloc, the KMT, TPP, and the independent lawmakers, they often align on votes. And this creates or has created an effective 62-seat majority against the 51-seat that the ruling DPP holds. So if you do the math, if the DPP can take back 6 seats, if there's a 6-seat swing going from KMT to DPP, then the DPP will have the majority. So DPP supporters have started a movement to recall pro-CCP legislators. And if they can successfully recall 6 of them and flip 6 seats, DPP will regain the control of the parliament. The recall process is long, but the Taiwanese public has started the process. And so far, I think as of maybe yesterday, 20 KMT legislators have been subjected to recall, the recall procedure. So while Taiwan and South Korea ruling party face similar political obstruction, there are notable differences between the two opposition parties. South Korea's opposition party, which is the Democratic Party of Korea, is a far-left party that supports globalist and progressive agenda or causes. Whereas Taiwan's opposition party, the KMT, is a conservative party on issues such as gender diversity, energy policy, the climate change. The KMT leans to the right, whereas the ruling DPP embraces leftist progressive ideologies. So here I want to bring up an important insight that people often neglect. I don't think others have addressed this. For the CCP, ideology does not matter. As much as we always believe that CCP is a ideologically driven political party, but to its leaders, ideology doesn't matter. Exploiting other countries' internal divisions does. The Chinese Communist regime ostensibly upholds extreme left communist ideals, but implements far-right social policies. For example, Under the communist banner of absolute equality, Beijing enforces one of the world's most unequal wealth distribution, wealth or social welfare distribution systems. The rural population doesn't get any it doesn't get any equitable share of the welfare benefits, while their urban counterparts do. So under the communist banner of absolute equality, Beijing embraces policies that are extremely unequal, right? It has one of the most unequal wealth distribution and benefit distribution systems. And then CCP shouts about global unity or ideas of globalism while aggressively practicing economic protectionism. In China, gender discrimination, racial discrimination, age discrimination, or anti-LGBTQ policies are not societal issues. They are endorsed and supported by official state policies. So what does that say? What does that tell you? So for the CCP, principles do not exist. What matters is exploiting internal conflicts to the max. The CCP's strategy in Asia Pacific is very simple. Identify existing societal tensions, fuel divisions, weaken stability, and ultimately gain control. Taiwan's right-wing KMT and South Korea's left-wing Democratic Party are both opposition parties. They're using the same obstructionist tactics to disrupt governance. And they have the same goal, which is to regain political power at any cost. So with pro-CCP forces now dominating Taiwan's legislative body, how will Taiwan's government and people and the US respond to the revolving situation is critical. So for now, China has scored some points, we must say. But these are, I think, short-term advantages. Their advantages or their points may not last in the long run. One Taiwanese say that the CCP has spent enormous resources and efforts to influence Taiwanese, but it fails to understand a critical trait of the Taiwanese people, that is, their deep-seated insecurity. Historically, Taiwan's early immigrants came from Fujian and the Minnan region. They crossed the sea in search of a better life. They left their homeland and built their futures in Taiwan. Now, as China continues to exert pressure on Taiwan, this sense of insecurity has only intensified. Taiwanese people, driven by their strong sense of insecurity, work tirelessly. People say this is why Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, or TSMC, is so successful. TSMC operates its machines 24/7 in 3 shifts. Their operation model cannot be copied in the US or any other Western country. The Taiwanese say their good work ethics and motivation come from CCP's enormous pressure and threats on their island. So Taiwan's economic and strategic trajectory is clear. The more pressure China exerts on the island, the closer Taiwan moves towards the US and Japan. So if you think about it, the same situation, the same trait applies. You could say the same thing about South Korea and its people. South Koreans have similar work ethics due to the threats from the North. So if you really look at this, CCP's strategies in the South, in the Asia Pacific, will backfire in the long run. Now, another point I want to make is the reason that why Taiwan and South Korea are um, under so much pressure um, are because they, for the past 20 or 30 years, both have adopted the policy that relies on China for the economy and relies on the US for security. But this model cannot last anymore. This model, under the current Sino-US confrontation, especially when Trump is in the White House, this model cannot hold anymore. And you could say the same thing for many other Asian countries, like the Philippines, right? And even some European countries, even EU are the same. They want to do business with China, but at the same time want the US to provide security. And this model, if you think about it, has allowed China to reap the fruit of international trade, while the US has shouldered a larger share of global security costs. This model has enabled the CCP to grow stronger economically at the cost of American taxpayers. So Donald Trump wants to change this. And with him in the White House, many countries will be forced to pick a side between China and the US. And that's exactly the pain that the countries like South Korea and Taiwan are experiencing right now. Because if you look at the internal division, you could say on one hand, it's due to the CCP's infiltration and influence over the years. But at another level, it is time that these countries make a decision. They have to choose between China and the US. You can no longer rely on one for the economy and the other for security. You have to pick a side, and there has to be sacrifices. There has to be a price to be made. So at the end of the day, the one who will ultimately feel the pain is Beijing. When everybody realigns in this, whenever one is forced to choose a side, the one who will ultimately feels the pain is Beijing. Trump understands the CCP poses the greatest threat to the US. And because this threat is so significant, I think he's taking a calculated approach. And this may explain why he has not yet announced any concrete policies against China. He's carefully planning his next moves and analyzing all possible reactions and consequences. However, this planning phase is likely a period when Beijing feels the most uneasy or most nervous, because they're uncertain about how Trump will strike, but knowing the action is coming. So Xi Jinping's current strategy, I just want to wrap up by saying that if you step back and look at Xi Jinping's strategy, it centers on destabilizing Taiwan internally by promoting the pro-CCP forces in the island. And this will create conditions for a potential deal with Trump, one that uses Taiwan as a bargaining chip. At the same time, this strategy will also pave the way for a potential military invasion by making Taiwan more vulnerable. This is no longer a covert plan. A year ago, you may say this is a covert plan, but now it's out in the open. And we can see him, see CCP executing it with full force. But with that said, I think things will not go as smoothly as he had thought, because the Trump's vision of a great America is fundamentally incompatible with Xi Jinping's global expansion with CCP's global expansion of communist authoritarianism. These two forces are likely clash. They're like fire and water. They cannot coexist. As a result, I think any temporary deals between the two sides will be purely transactional or opportunistic or temporary, and they're not strategically meaningful. So with that, hopefully I've painted a picture of the geopolitical landscape in Asia Pacific and what to expect ahead. All right, that's all. Let's see. Oh, what questions do people have? Oh, by the way, I wanna make an announcement. I know I picked tonight's topic. While being fully aware that it's not gonna be a popular topic because people are not talking about it. And there's no media that's talking about this, comparing what's happening in Taiwan versus what's happening in South Korea. But I think it's important. We have to give it a program. So that's what I did it. And the other thing I want to say is we have a moderator now. I've made, because with so many little pinks and CCP trolls with us last time, I think we do need a moderator. So I've made Chris our moderator. So let's welcome Chris as a moderator. Okay, so people, including little pinks and trolls, please behave yourselves. Okay, Chris can time you out if you don't behave. All right, I hope that doesn't happen. I hope Chris will minimally exercise his power. All right. Okay. Let's see. All right, let's see. What questions do people have? Let me acknowledge the people. Oh, another YouTube channel. All right. Trump will just halted all mail from China and Hong Kong. What do you mean by halt? I think all the small packages and parcels shipped from China under $800 value are now subject to the tariffs. Yeah, and then the 10% additional tariff that he recently imposed is on top of the 25% that he put on Chinese goods during his first term, right? So it's 25% plus the 10%, so it's 35%. So that could be significant for an e-commerce platform like Temu, and Shein. Mark Irvin. Well, thank you, Mark. Thank you, Mark, for the support. Thank you. Much appreciated. I know it's not a topic. It's not a topic that will garner widespread popular interest. Like if I do, oh, Xi Jinping has a stroke, then all of a sudden you get so much views. But but then topic like this is more strategic planning, more strategic thinking. I know they're not going to get a lot of views, but the topic is important, and I know there aren't other people doing it, so I must do it. So your donation is appreciated. All right, let's see. I agree with the yin yang. Yeah, when there's a yin, there's a yang. So we shouldn't look at. So there's no absolute bad situation. A bad situation also has a positive side. This is a very strong Chinese belief. No matter how bad a situation is, it creates an equally positive side effect or impact. So they go hand in hand. And if by the same token, there isn't absolutely good things. Good things also have a negative impact. So everything is balanced out. All right, let's see. Okay, all right. Prayer warrior. Lei, you're right about spies being caught red-handed everywhere. It's really scary. Secretary Teodoro revealed that the PRC National Intel Law of 2017 had, yeah, this is actually the risk. The West is fighting it's unfair. You're right. The PRC, the CCP has mobilized all of its citizens to work for the regime. I mean, but this is the biggest security threat to the West, because the war the CCP is fighting is an uneven war. We're not fighting the CCP at the same level, precisely because the CCP has all of its citizens involved, right? Usually it's government to government, military to military, and the governments leave the people out. But when we deal with the CCP, it's so difficult, because the CCP, has forced all of its people to jump on the same war wagon with the regime. So it's an uneven war. So how are you going to fight with a regime that has brought all of its people, into the battlefield? It's very difficult. All right. Someone said, Lei, you look great. Oh, in this plaid jacket? I have a fan who sent me an email saying that I look good in plaids. So I bought this top. Hopefully it compliments me. But the color is very vibrant. It's very bold. Because I deal with very gloomy subjects. I need bright things to light up, to light up my world, so it's not so gloomy. All right, let's see. Charles Womack, awesome show, Lei. Well, thank you, Charles. I appreciate that. All right, let's see. David Lopan, have you heard about the CCP's recent cyber attack on Spain targeting safeguard defenders? Yes, I have. They are the human rights group that exposed the secret police stations. Yeah, it's terrible, because what they did is they had some cyber personalities imposing as safeguard defenders, but doing destructive work. So they're impersonators, doing terror. That's what they do. They're everywhere. I mean, if you look at the spy cases, they're all over the world. But my question is, how are we going to deal with it? I want to talk about this maybe this Saturday. I want to talk about what strategy can we have? How do the world's governments deal with the CCP that has brought its massive population into this war? Because other governments cannot, weaponize its citizens, but the CCP has. It has weaponized its own citizens. So it's how we're going to fight, And this is precisely the reason how the KMT lost the Civil War in the 1940s. This is how they lost. It's not because they didn't have good weapons. It's not because they didn't have a superior military. They did, but they still lost. So I think the West need to study how the KMT lost in the 1940s and not repeat the same mistake. Sometimes the West thinks that just by having a far more superior military, maybe we could deter the CCP. Judging by what's happening in South Korea and Taiwan, I have other concerns. So, latest merch question, Hailei, is Western media glorying DeepSeek by omitting real cost to build DeepSeek? I don't know, but I mean, by now people have already debunked DeepSeeks, right? I mean, somebody did the calculation. I did a program. I had someone who left a comment saying that he doesn't believe that DeepSeek uses or has 50,000 GPUs, advanced GPUs. But then I saw another study, someone actually estimated that they actually have 60,000. They have amassed 60,000 GPUs. So if DeepSeek is a strategic project for the regime, then the government can consolidate all the GPUs, all the resources the country has to support DeepSeek um, to fulfill its mission, right? Because a private company here works on their own. You have to spend the money to procure all these hardware on your own. No government will support you. But in China, if DeepSeek is deemed as strategically important for the regime, then the CCP can issue a mandate and require all the other large enterprises or organizations to help DeepSeek to procure the equipment they need. So it's a centralized effort to support one company, and that, I believe that that has happened many times before. So how can you compete? How can OpenAI compete with DeepSeek? You're essentially competing with a foreign government that has devoted national resources to compete with you. So I don't know what the Western media has been saying about DeepSeek, but are they repeating what the CCP is saying? It would be very pathetic if they did. And if you really think about the news that came out today, isn't CCP investigating Google in China? It's investigating Google's monopoly in China, and that's a joke. The Chinese are saying, well, where do I find Google in China? I don't even see Google in China. I don't see YouTube in China. How can you investigate Google's monopoly in China? So that's a joke. But on the other hand, I mean, hasn't YouTube recently decided to, help the CCP to kind of censor people like me, like myself, on their platform? Why do they do that? So that proves to, YouTube should learn this lesson. Google should learn this lesson. See, the first person the CCP will punish directly are the ones who have helped them. The only way you could be safe with the CCP is the more you're honest and direct with the CCP, the safer you are. If you cave into the CCP, then you are the first victim of the regime. And that proves, like, of all the companies the CCP can name to launch its investigation, why did they choose Google? Why did they choose Google? I mean, Google is not in China. YouTube is not in China. But why do they pick Google? It's because Google has shown signs of weakness in front of the CCP, because Google has promised to help the CCP. And that's why it's the victim. I think they should learn something from this lesson. If they're smart, if they're really smart. I think, the best strategy to deal with the CCP is, number one, you have to be technically impeccable. You have to be very good at what you do. That's number one. You have to earn its respect. Number two, you have to be non-provocative, meaning that you cannot be emotional in what you say and what you do. You state the fact, you state the truth, and leave emotions out of it. And number three is you cannot cave in. You need to stick to your principle. The CCP fears people who are very principled. And at the end, they may respect you for that. So those three requirements are needed if you want to deal with the CCP. And then you have to take it lightheartedly. You can't take it too seriously. Because if you do, then they will take you too seriously. All right. Oh yeah, Nick Fury. Big S, big 大 S, big S actress died from H1N1 in Japan. Is this causing fear in China? Big time. This is causing so much fear in China, but the fear is not about China. The fear is about Japan. Same thing in Taiwan. I think, but more so in China. I think the propaganda machine is trying to steer the attention away from the outbreaks in China, because right now there's a H1N1 outbreak in China. There's actually a number of outbreaks in China. We don't know what it is. Influenza A, the uh, the bird flu, the maybe COVID. I mean, there's a combination of things, happening in China. Actually, I heard that the crematoriums are backlogged. There's a waiting list. There's a waiting period for people to cremate the remains of their families because of the size of because of casualties. But of course, the government is hiding this from us. But private citizens have been talking about how long they have to wait before they cremate the bodies of their families. So, her death. There's a famous actress from Taiwan who died while visiting in Japan. So it became newsworthy in China. But the focus is that she died in Japan. That there's a major outbreak in Japan, and so Chinese are now canceling their trips to Japan because of that. But this story is convenient. It is convenient for the CCP to cover up its own outbreak because now it can blame on Japan. So, but the situation in China is many times worse. Actually, this actress was already sick before she landed in Japan. She wasn't feeling well. She already got the flu. Um, yeah. Someone asked me, have you heard of the Taiwan invasion show called The Zero Day? Someone in chat mentioned it. No, I have not. What is the Taiwan invasion show? Is there a show dedicated to Taiwan invasion? Well, tell me more about it. All right. Thank you. Okay, hold on. Question. Okay, here's a question forwarded by Chris from Raymond Rust. Like, can she see how unsuccessful Putin's war is? That he will have similar fate with Taiwan? Have you ever seen a dictator, or at least a Chinese communist dictator, learn from um, um, okay, let me backtrack. I think he has certainly watched, I think he has learned from Putin's war, but he's trying to avoid the same mistake that Putin made. That's why I think he's going to be very careful with the military invasion. I think he's going to avoid that. That's why, you know, internal political division and infiltration. I mean, the best plan for Xi Jinping is to have a pro-Beijing government that pass a law to say that Taiwan is part of, the best way is to have a government in Taiwan that the CCP can control, that will one day pass a law saying that Taiwan is part of China. Then it appears that it's a choice made by the Taiwanese people, and the United States cannot do anything. So that's why the CCP is spending so much effort and money on trying to infiltrate Taiwan society. Because if this happens, then it saves CCP the trouble of an invasion, which is highly risky and dangerous. That's why the situation in Taiwan is is serious, and I'm surprised that the mainstream media is not covering it. All right. Uno love me. Uno love me. You know love me. I don't know how to pronounce your name, but it's interesting. Okay, Lei, what warnings do you think you'd see, you specifically, that would indicate CCP invasion of Taiwan is imminent? You have much better insights than any other sources I follow. I think at this point, I really do not think the CCP is going to invade Taiwan. I really do not think that's happening. If you know the level of chaos that's happening in the PLA, on Thursday, I may do a program on how out of control China's defense industry has become. I want to do a program dedicated on the status quo of the defense industry in China. So then you get an idea. Because when your defense industry is in total chaos, it's upside down. I mean, you don't have weapons. You don't have the machineries, the weapons to start a war. You can't. Even if you have soldiers, what are you going to use to fight in a war? So they go hand in hand. So on one hand, the morale of the PLA is low. On the other hand, the defense industry is turned completely upside down. So I don't see how the CCP is going to start a war. But that doesn't mean that it's not going to engage in dangerous or provocative moves near Taiwan, which may accidentally start something and then become out of control. But out of its own will, I don't think Xi Jinping wants to start a war, at least now or in the near future, because things will be completely out of control. Okay, I already answered the question. Oh, here's a question from Trevor Chapman Lay. Have you read the novel? Have you read the novel 1984 Animal Farm, Lord of the Flies and Fahrenheit? I have heard of these novels, and I'm familiar with these novels, but I haven't read them. I have not read any novels in many years, to be honest with you. No time. I think we live in why do we need to read novels? Don't we live in a world that's even more fascinating than any novels? I think the world we live in, the things that happen in our life, is so dramatic that I don't think I need to read any novels. I live in a novel. I live in actually many novels, shall we say, that develop simultaneously. Timothy Bradbury, what do you think the DPP's chances are to take back control of the Legislative Yuan? By the way, this is one of the most important topics you have discussed. Well, thank you for recognizing that. I knew that. Well, what do I think? Some people, the views are divided. There are many experts, quote unquote experts, who think it's highly difficult for DPP will certainly be successful in recalling some legislators, but whether or not they will actually be successful to have 6 removed or replaced, they think it's highly unlikely. However, if you talk with the people who are in the movement, who are organizing these mass movements, or events to counter CCP's influence in Taiwan, they're very passionate. They're very, very passionate, very enthusiastic. So you have expert opinion versus enthusiasm and grassroots movements. Who's going to win? It's hard to say. And we live in a time when expert opinions often fail. So I think to me, it's 50-50. I think there's a 50% chance that they can flip 6 seats. But it may take some time. Yeah. Shiny shiny man. With President Trump back, do you think that Taiwan and South Korea will more likely to swing back to anti-CCP to be in the good graces of President Trump and continue to receive U.S. aids, right? I mean, it depends on who you talk to. I think there are the two factions in those countries, right? Some of the politicians, like some people in the country certainly do not want to align themselves with the United States, and the rest of the country does. So I think Trump wants to change one thing, that is, these Asian countries must stop the policy that they rely on China for economic development and then rely on the US for security. They have to pick a side. I think this is the change that Trump is making. This is the major change, because that's not fair. It's like, okay, you want to work with China or or allow China or make money or grow business together with China. And then on the other hand, you want the US to protect you, to have that environment that benefits you and China. That's just not fair. So the US will, I think he's what he's doing is have everyone pay an equitable share for their security, and create an environment where business can thrive, in a free environment without CCP's interference. So KJ Thompson. Well, thank you, KJ. Thank you. Question from Late's March. Hi, Late. Is Western media a growing deep seek? Oh, I think I already answered that question. I did. All right, let's see. Okay, I think I will. That's it? Wow, there are a lot of questions I'm not able to reach. I'm very slow in scrolling down. Oh, here's a question from Netflix Forum. I think going after the CCP on the environment and all the animals that have gone extinction in China under their rule. There are not only a lot of animals, but a lot of human beings that have perished under their rule. Animals and human beings. Sad. Okay. All right. Seek the truth. How concerned are you about the shift of Japan slightly leaning back towards China under their new regime? I'm concerned. Yeah, I'm concerned because I do see one Taiwanese expert saying that now that you see same thing happening in South Korea, now Taiwan, and the next country could be Japan. These Asian countries, the CCP has infiltrated a lot of the Asian countries. I mean, same in the US. I mean, look at Canada. Look at Canada. Look at Europe. Look at UK. All the Western countries. I mean, in the past 20 years, we just let the Chinese come in to do business, but who has influenced who, right? So I'm concerned. I feel if they don't wake up, if Japanese politicians and its public don't wake up after realizing what has happened in South Korea and Taiwan, if they don't realize that this could happen in their country, then they're really utterly ignorant. That's what I want to say. Okay. All right. I think we should stop here because I feel like I'm a little thirsty. Okay. All right. Well, I thank you for joining me, and I'll see you on Thursday. We should, if nothing major happens on Thursday, I should talk about China's defense defense industry, how corrupt that is, or how chaotic it has become. I think that should be a fun topic. So stay tuned, and I'll see you Thursday. Thank you. Bye-bye.